GPT-5, I think it's debatable whether it's a big deal or a nothing burger. I think if it is raising the capability of OpenAI's ChatGPT, its reasoning capability in the way that it's described, it's probably a very big deal. Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. So this is another one of those AI quick takes where I do my best to try and demystify some of what's going on in this whole AI world and what it means for us as a community of healthcare technology marketers. Today, I'm going to talk about something which has been blowing my head up, which is the confusion about the different AI models, because there are many different companies that are trying to be the leaders in this generative AI world, and each one has a different set of models. I have found it very, very confusing, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So today I'm going to try and do my best to demystify that. I'm also going to talk a lot about one of the sort of new announcements that's happened in the last few weeks, which is OpenAI's introduction of ChatGPT-5 and what that's supposed to be about and what the promise of it is. It's quite interesting. I'm not sure it's cracked up everything it's cracked up to be, but still, it's a pretty cool model. I'm also going to talk about how we as a company actually have adopted OpenAI as our chosen company-wide platform and what we're doing to sort of make AI part of how we work and driving adoption and changing the way that we do the work that we do using AI. And I'm going to dive into a lot of other things. Most importantly, I'm going to talk about what this means for you as healthcare marketers. Now, you might have noticed, if you're a follower of the show and you're watching this, that actually, if you're watching this on YouTube rather than listening to the show, there's a new logo up there. And that's because we have a new sponsor. So Healthcare Now Radio is now one of the sponsors. And with that, I'm going to bring to the stage the amazing Carol Flagg. Carol, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I'm so delighted to add you to our sponsors, to be sponsoring this along with HIMSS and Health Launchpad. So tell everybody a little bit about Healthcare Now Radio.
Yeah. So ironically, Healthcare Now Radio, which is a live streaming internet radio station that streams across the US and the world 24/7, debuted at HIMSS in 2012. So the synergy with HIMSS is absolutely perfect. I know, right? Besides the internet radio station, we actually have a companion podcast channel as well. So it's 16 radio shows that stream live and then 25 other podcast shows that we syndicate across our network.
That's great. And so as part of this sponsorship, we're really fortunate that the Health Tech Marketing Show is now going to be syndicated across your network. So I'm really excited that these shows are going to reach more people, and that's
as they should.
Indeed, absolutely. So, Carol, I thank you for your support. Really looking forward to our partnership together. And with that, you know what? Let's just get on with this next episode.
Can't wait.
So the title of this episode is Model Mania. And here's why I'm doing this episode. I don't know about you, but I'm just finding the whole selection of models to be incredibly confusing. It's quite overwhelming. I wish that the AI world would simplify itself to like the computer world, where at the end of the day, it's really just about Mac or Windows. Sure, there's still other operating systems out there, but really at the end of the day, it's about those two. And maybe that's where it's going to go eventually. But right now, there's a huge array of choices. And I think even for the people who are on the cutting edge of what's going on, it's still confusing. So I thought what I'd try and do is a couple of things. First of all, explain the different models as I understand them. It's not going to get super technical. It's going to be very high level. Talk a little bit about what I think OpenAI is up to. And then I'll also talk about how we as a company chose which model we've adopted for now as our current LLM of choice for the company. So let's just start with a bit of a review of the different models that are out there. So first of all, there's OpenAI, right? ChatGPT, that's the model. And there are lots of different versions of it. So there's 3.5, there's ChatGPT 4, and there's ChatGPT 4.0. And they've just, in the last couple of weeks, rolled out ChatGPT 5. And I remember using it on the day of announcement. And actually, my colleagues were having the same issue, which is, do we have ChatGPT 5 or not? I couldn't figure it out. It was particularly weird because, if you're used to using ChatGPT, it's got that on model selector thing at the top. And it had all the different models in it except ChatGPT 5. So when I actually asked a ChatGPT, said, do I have ChatGPT 5? It said, yes, because you're a team user. You've got it automatically. Don't worry about the models. We'll just pick the right model, whichever your query is. So, all right, okay, great. Not remotely intuitive and quite hard concept to get around. I kind of think the short story is that one of the things that's part of ChatGPT 5 is that you move away from this having to make a decision about which model flavor of ChatGPT you use. Depending on your query, on your prompt, it then picks the one that it thinks is the right one for you. So actually, I think that's quite a good thing. That simplifies things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other stuff within ChatGPT 5 in a bit. So that's OpenAI. Then there's Meta. Now, I'd have to say Meta is the one that I've actually got to know the least of the bunch. But at a high level, Meta's strategy with its recent announcements, and this is ChatGPT's LLM, its model is called Llama. And they had a couple of announcements. They came out with Scout and Maverick, and they are basically a couple of open source models. So the idea is that you can download this and then roll your own AI application using their open source model. So that seems to be what their strategy is. I know they've also got, a whole strategy of how they're using AI within the Meta platform. So within Instagram and Facebook, etc. But I don't know an awful lot about that. And when we were making our decision about which platform we were going to go for, it didn't really figure. Then there's Google, right? So Google is embedding AI into everything that it does. And at the heart of it is Google DeepMind, which has been around for a while. Google DeepMind is their big deal. And they've been evolving the way that they're branding their LLM. Initially, it was called Palm, then it became Bard, and now it's Gemini. And so Gemini is their equivalent to ChatGPT. And it's interesting because what they seem to be doing is blending in sort of massive computing power with research grade AI and then integrating it into everything that they do, your Gmail, your search, your Google Workspace, so your Excel, your Google Sheets, your Google Docs, all of that sort of stuff. And so it's making it part of it. They also came out with a new thing called Genie 3, which is they're calling it a world model that can build interactive 3D environments from text or images. So you could literally create kind of a cozy bookshop in Kyoto just by describing it and a walk around this in a 3D model. I haven't tried this out, but wow, does that sound cool. Next up is Anthropic. And I'm a big fan of Anthropic. I've always loved Claude. It is my writing assistant. I've been using Claude pretty much since Claude's been around, and I really, really, really like it a lot. What's different about Anthropic is they are trying to position themselves as the most trusted LLM. And so they have this concept that they call constitutional AI. And so they kind of want to be seen as the responsible one in the room. So do no harm. I kind of think of them as the sort of more cautious choice. I think it's a little bit more limited in terms of how you use it. But frankly, I think that may be a reflection of the fact that I've been a bit of a one-trick pony in how I use Claude, as I use it as a writing assistant. You can also use it for coding. And I think it's been one of the leading LLMs for that. So that's kind of interesting. Then there's Perplexity. Perplexity is just amazing for research. I think if ever I'm writing a piece of content and I want some citations, I just upload the blog and I say, hey, give me 10 citations, and bang, comes up with 10 fantastic citations and links, and you can add them to your content. That's just one real simple version of it. Obviously, it can be used for much more sophisticated reasons than that. But Perplexity is amazing in that regard. And then there's Grok, and I've never used Grok, so I really can't speak to it. Clearly they've been getting a lot of negative attention, or that I get the impression they kind of like. The latest thing is that apparently has a pretty cool text to visual creative tool, but they have a thing called Spicy Model, which is quite controversial. So I don't really think from a business standpoint, something that I'm particularly interested in dabbling with. But anyway, so that's the kind of current AI arms race. It slightly reminds me of the mid-90s and all those different browsers that are out there. There was Netscape, there was Internet Explorer, there are a whole bunch of other browsers out at the time. So there's a little bit of that going on right now. Now, we as a company went through a process about a month ago to try and figure out which LLM we were going to use across the company. So what we've been doing is actively encouraging everybody to experiment, do no harm in what you do, but experiment with your own personal choices of LLM. But, as we're now getting much more focused and strategic in the way that we're using AI, and I'll share a lot more about that at a later date, because I think you might enjoy hearing about the story about how we're adopting it. I'll share sort of all the trials and tribulations of doing that. But we decided that as we're really doubling down on this, that we needed to adopt one single platform. And so we looked at Anthropic, we looked at Google, I looked at Perplexity, didn't look at Grok, didn't look at Llama, but actively looked at OpenAI. And in the end, we decided that we would go with OpenAI as our enterprise team solution. And that was, we felt that it really met the criteria in terms of the scope of what it can do, what the vision of OpenAI is, being on the cutting edge, but also having sort of the capabilities that they have. It seemed to be broader, and it seemed to be much better tuned to the kind of team collaboration that we're trying to engender across that. To be honest, I don't know whether, we might relook at that at some point, but, the more you use an application like this as a group, you raise your own switching costs. So, we got everybody over the last month creating GPTs. So everybody on the team has created their own GPTs for tasks that they're involved with. So that might be evaluating websites to understand the messaging. It might be evaluating content to see how it can be optimized better for the answer engines, a whole bunch of different use cases. And then we're sharing those GPTs across the team. And that was a kind of an important step to get everybody over that hump of creating your first GPT. I want to kind of talk a little bit more about what's going on with GPT-5, because I think this validates our decision to go with this. So as I mentioned, it's, when they came out with it in early August, so a few weeks back, it was all a bit confusing because it didn't seem to be anything different. But I think this is more reflective of what GPT-5 is about. It's actually more about what's going on behind the scenes than something different. So in a previous podcast, I talked about GPT agent. That's a whole different thing, right? That's something which is, you're giving something instructions to go off and do different tasks for you. This is more about how the brain itself works. And they seem to have done some things to this that improve the memory and the performance of the LLM. And as I mentioned, they've also simplified it so that apparently you no longer have to decide which version of the model. So I think the best way of thinking about it is it's GPT-04, so the most highly functioned model on steroids. But if you put in a query that really is pretty simple, I mean, it's sort of like almost like a search query that a Wikipedia, post would answer, you're probably going to end up with the basic text version, which is ChatGPT. Doesn't even have a number though, the default version of it. Maybe it's 3.5. Yeah, so that's it. The other thing, which is there's an aspect to it called GPT-5 thinking, which is more about how it actually thinks, the cogitation that it does around your query. So if you ask it a query with a lot of complexity, it has a lot more reasoning potential. So you can put in much more complicated prompts into it and put in much more data. And ostensibly, it can go off and actually really think about this and reason about the question that you've asked it. And so that's kind of interesting. It seems to be a step in the direction towards what's called AGI, which is artificial generative intelligence, which is, in short, is like, it works like our brains. There's a lot of different, you ask 20 people what AGI is, and you're going to get 20 different variations on a theme. But the notion is it's moving towards the ability to have intelligence, which is, at human level, whatever that actually ends up actually meaning. So this is what this is what I've come to learn about it. I think where it's applying that to what we all do here as health tech marketers, I want to go back to a use case I described in my podcast on the agent, which is, imagine, if you will, one of your customers, maybe it's the CIO of the CFO of a hospital who's looking for a new revenue cycle management solution. So they may send off somebody on their team or somebody in the IT team to go evaluate the best solutions. So, you might, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, they might use an agent to go off and actually search across lots of different sources. But if you combine that with the additional reasoning capability that ostensibly comes with GPT-5, it means that they've got the ability to do a lot more analysis and a lot more evaluation and thinking. And so for us, I think there's kind of a challenge and an opportunity. So the challenge is, it means it's even less likely that they're going to engage with us, with vendors, until they're really good and ready and they've made up their decision. And so, the salespeople and the SDRs who are trying to get hold of these people are going to find it even harder. So that's the problem, right? The second thing is, and this is the opportunity, is I think it means that there's even more onus on us as the marketers to make sure that their content is out there that not only provides answers to humans, that's first and foremost what we're about, right? But also provides answers to the AI engines. So that means that you're providing a lot more information in the public domain, even much more deep technical information. And, the sort of level of stuff that you really wouldn't put on a public website is now you might even put that out on a website, on a page that maybe the answer engines are going to find, but humans are not going to find, because it's going to help demonstrate why your solution is better than the competitors. I mean, that's one simple reason. The other thing is, get more experts in your organization talking on video and get them on YouTube channels. Even if they're only not very well finished, you've got to kind of have that content out there that's going to feed this AI beast, so that when your buyers are out there doing this sort of deep research that they're going to be able to do, and these deep evaluations, that you end up influencing the results that they're getting back out of these AI engines. Anyway, so that's my perspective on the various models out there. And, GPT-5, I think it's debatable whether it's a big deal or a nothing burger. I think if it is raising the capability of OpenAI's ChatGPT, its reasoning capability in the way that it's described, it's probably a very big deal. So, by the way, if you want to have a chat with somebody about it, I'm happy to do that. I can share what we're learning, how we're approaching AI. And so always willing to have a chat. There's a link to my scheduling, to my Calendly down below. And also, if there's anything you want me to look into from an AI perspective to cover on these quick takes, just email me at adam@healthlaunchpad.com. So with that, I will see you on the next one.